Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Young, Wild, Financially Free podcast. My name is Andrew Roberts, and I have a co-host who you might or might not be able to see right now, depending on what screen is recording. But his name is Matthew Tytke, and we are great friends that started this podcast a few years ago, and we are really excited to get new and interesting guests on our podcast every single week. And it's mainly focused towards entrepreneurship and real estate investing. And today, our podcast guest is a little bit of both. Someone that we're not too familiar with. We haven't met too many times before. She is an awesome entrepreneur, also a seasoned real estate investor. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to dive into her story on real estate investing and who she is. Her name is Kim Wheeler. Kim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrew.
Of course. We also have a sidekick upon your request. Please tell us who you have with us.
I have here with us Robert Kohlberg.
That's right, yeah. And we actually know, full transparency to our audience, that Robert Kohlberg has been our maintenance coordinator and a great friend for many, many, many years. Robert, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Of course. So, Kim, like I said, we want to kind of dive into your history, your experience with real estate investing. And we can even dive into a little bit of your experience in business if that's how the story goes. But for now, what kind of got you into real estate investing? What kind of got you interested in buying up long-term rental properties?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on your show.
Of course.
And I guess to start off, and this is exactly what, when you guys asked me to come on as a guest speaker, Robert Kohlberg, who is also here with us today, was the main reason why I got into real estate. And I felt like it was really important to have him, both of us, collaborate and tell our story. But if it wasn't for Robert Kohlberg, I wouldn't be where I was at today. So anyway, so basically Robert Kohlberg, he got me into it. Robert, and maybe you can kind of tell this story, as a previous property manager.
Okay, let me just say that there's many different ways she can say, Robert, you got me into this. Mm-hmm. You just heard the very nice version. I've heard the other version with a much more colorful expletives involved. Yeah. This is the truth. As best I remember it, we were having a good for nothing after. I believe we were in between some of the kids' baseball games, mm-hmm. and Kim stopped by the house and she had me make her a banana split, as we usually did. And so she's laying there getting fat and happy, and the house next door to mine was vacant. And it's nothing special, not a fancy neighborhood by any means. It's kind of a starter neighborhood. And I said, it's for sale. And she said, well, how much do they want for it? I said, not much. Well, what? I said, you ought to buy it and make it a rent house. What the? And she looked at me like I lost my mind. What the hell do I know about owning a rent house? So maybe 20 minutes later, we're using my special pass key to get inside the house that was vacant, and looked around. You would have thought she saw a ghost the way she was walking through there. Wouldn't touch anything. Had her arms to the side. So this was in 2004. So I know. She said, "What do I know?" She said, "What do I know about it?" I said, "Well, you don't have to. I know about. I've been doing property management for years, and the house needed a ton of work. But I looked at it. I said, well, we can put a lot of equity into this house really fast. Mm-hmm. And because they're selling it as is, I feel like we can get a bargain. And I don't remember the price, and so I talked
around
her into
$64,000.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't what they were asking. That was what you were willing to pay. They were actually asking like $83,500.
This is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, I'm assuming.
3-2, about 1,200 square feet over, and like I said, it was an okay neighborhood.
Sure.
2004 prices. That same house today is worth $197,000. Wow. If that tells you what's happened to the market.
Right.
So they wanted like 84. I told her, I said, well, you ought to offer 74. She said, okay, let's offer 64. because that's the way her family thinks. and I thought, well, you'll never get it at that price. But what the hell? We put an offer, and I'll be damned. A couple of weeks later, they accepted that offer.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And of course, I had to hear "I told you so." But Kim came to the table with a lot of ammunition. Like she had. Let me tell you, Kim has very good connections. So she had a really solid banker ready to go to work for her.
Mm-hmm.
She had a good realtor that got the thing done quickly, and she had me. So we could literally go in just a few minutes of me walking through the house. I kind of had it in my mind what the house was going to need,
Mm-hmm.
or as for more investment. And next couple 3 weeks later, it was bought. It was closed. She was nervous as I've ever seen anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And she hated it, and she hated me. She hated everything about it for about a month.
Yeah.
Until we got the thing done.
Right.
And then she was like, and let me just back up and say she was over there putting some sweat equity into it herself.
Mm-hmm.
The boy, our kids, they were all, I think they were about 8 or 9 at the time. I don't know. How old were you in 2004, Matt?
Andrew, same age.
Yeah. We were 13 years old.
Yeah, y'all were real young. I don't remember. I was thinking you were younger than that. But
Yeah.
only you know what your true age is. But anyway, we had the boys. The boys did what work they could. Even if it was just moving trash around.
Mm-hmm.
Kim climbed up in the trees with an electric sawzall 30 feet off the ground. I mean, literally, we were doing this, or she was working on the side. I was dedicating all my time to it. She would be up at 9 o'clock at night on a weeknight. We'd have floodlights out in the yard, and she's climbing up in the tree, cutting these big ass branches down. And anybody around her had to be real careful because she wasn't about yelling timber when they were coming down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Kim, if I remember correctly, at this time you had 3 or 4 cell phones, and you were working, overtime at your job. So, what was it like for, I guess, this to kind of be thrown on your plate at that time?
Wow. Well, I think I only had 2.
Oh.
So,
No.
You had like 5 of those Nextel brick phones.
I don't think I had a pager. It was all I've ever known. I grew up in a very large family, 9 siblings, a total of 10. That's all we ever knew. We just that's how we operate. We're going all the time, 24/7. Have to be moving, doing. So that was the easy part of it.
Got it.
The scary part was getting into something that I was in unfamiliar waters. But as Robert said, I surrounded myself with really good people. I had a great group of people around me that helped me make this process so easy. So it was amazing.
That's awesome. And what was your plan with it? Because obviously you guys, with Robert's help and obviously sweat equity and then encouragement, like you guys were, basically flipping this house. Did you want to refinance it, or was it your money? I guess, whose money was it that you were using to, 1, buy the house, and then 2, to finance the repairs?
Mine.
Okay.
And we didn't even have to do the financing on the repairs. I was just a good saver. How about I just say that? So,
all right. Yeah.
And I think we actually did pay cash for it. Maybe not, but it came pretty easy. So it was we always knew that we would rent it. I don't think we ever had plans at that time to flip it. Our whole plan was to rent it.
Right there. Was that like your first big, and like you were just saving up cash for as long as you could, and that was your first big investment at the time?
Right. And it wasn't saving. I wasn't saving the money to get into real estate. I was saving money for my retirement.
Yeah. For a safety net.
To be able to put you guys through college and stuff like that. So
yeah. And
those were the things long term I was thinking. I never thought about getting into real estate ever.
Well, what was the process, Robert? You said she was obviously scared when she was walking through there, kind of new territory. Was this a big conversation to explain how real estate works and why this could be your retirement? How did that work out?
I don't remember all the conversations. I know there was a lot of hand holding that had to go on because you know her better than anybody on this planet. She can be very emotional, and she wears her heart on her sleeve. So there was a weird dichotomy that had to go on. She wanted to know exactly how it worked, but then she didn't want to know. if that makes any sense. But she was more involved in the first one because she just wasn't sure. Well, I know she trusted me with her life. She trusted her banker. Her best friend was her insurance agent. That was one of her big concerns is liability. I don't want something to happen in this rent house, and then everything I worked for my whole life I get sued my pants off. So that was also something that gave Kim a lot of comfort. Isn't that right, Kim?
Yes, I agree.
You knew you were very well protected, and so that made her real comfortable with moving through this. And she was really easy to work with, except for the occasional fits if the job wasn't going quite as fast as she wanted it to.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah.
But Andrew, getting back to your question, as far as I'd love to sit here and say that Kim had this great business plan projected out over the next 15 years. I'd love to say that, but it wouldn't be true. It was just something we just knew she could do it. It would be good for us.
Yeah. That's awesome. Very cool. And so I guess how quick was it before the next one happened?
Well, that's a good question because, with all the worry, this is where her wheeler kicks in. I don't remember how the pay, but we rented it out. She couldn't believe what we were getting for rent.
Do you remember what you were getting for it?
I believe it was $825 to start.
That's awesome.
Where she couldn't believe it. I mean, she was nervous right up till the day that people paid a deposit and moved in. And as soon as that happened, she said, "All right, what's the next one?"
Yeah.
And then the fire was lit. Good,
Yeah.
because she'd gone through everything from closing to writing the check,
renovation.
the renovation. She saw that, wow, maybe this isn't as impossible as I thought it was. So we went to the next, and we did about one a year for about 14 years.
Wow.
Or maybe not quite that long. It ended up being, I think it was 14, maybe a little more.
Man, that's incredible. That's awesome.
But the business plan did not exist, to be honest with you.
It really didn't.
No.
Yeah.
And so that first one, you said you think you remember paying cash for it. And I mean, what was obviously 14 more, like, I don't know your financial situation, but when did you start getting into using leverage and like getting loans and playing around with that stuff?
That was probably what, Robert, maybe 8. I think you could have so many where the laws changed, like after 5, then you had to start paying cash, right? Or no, you had to get a loan, right?
Well, Debbie at Wells Fargo, well, you got to back up. We started on around number 4 getting into some leverage because there was only so much cash sitting around, right?
Right.
I mean, you pay $64,000 for a house and you're only getting it back at $825 a month. Obviously, so it was around the 3rd or 4th one where we really started to understand how to work some leverage and keep the cash available. I'm trying not to be long-winded, but
I think we got a line of credit at Wells Fargo.
Yeah, this line of credit. She went to her banker, her personal banker, which you can't discount how valuable Debbie was at Wells Fargo. She gave Kim a ridiculous line of credit, which gave her a tremendous amount of buying power when she put in an offer. Because she would submit this line of credit like, this lady right here is a slam dunk closed deal. She'll accept the house as is, where is, paid cash, closed in 10 days.
Right.
I mean, it was extremely attractive to sellers. So she really could go in and she made some straight up hot garbage offers. But she's like that person that doesn't go to the grocery store when she's hungry. There was never a deal she was worried about losing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was much more worried about paying. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, Robert, you actually taught me this. You said that the person that wins in negotiations is the one that cares less. You told me that.
That's exactly
true. It is true.
That's true. And Kim could really care less because she had a good real estate agent looking out for her, so we always knew there's another deal right around the corner.
Right. And we were able to walk away. I mean, we walked away from a lot of them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had this conversation with her. This was one of our first realtors. Kim was really gone on the low ball bench, and I knew that we could pay 10 to 20 more and still get the deal, but Kim was adamant. She's holding the line. She had this number that was pulled out of nowhere other than her imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And so the realtor calls me before she presents the office to Robert. Could you please talk to her and get her to come up just 5 or 6 more? I said, Ivy, if I ask her for 5 more, she's going to lower her offer by 5.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, are you serious? I said, I'm not kidding at all. She'll do it just to punish me for asking.
Mm-hmm.
So she submitted the offer, got the deal, and that's the way things like that work in Kim's world.
Mm-hmm.
Kim, so I guess this might kind of backtrack before your real estate investing career, but like what led you to be that aggressive when it came to getting deals and I guess, operating that way?
Well, probably from my father,
Okay.
wheeler dealer.
Uh-huh.
We're in sales and, always a family business, and seeing how he would talk to customers, develop relationships with people, probably just learn from him and our whole family. I guess we're all into business for ourselves, most of us. And, I don't know. I guess like Robert said, I just didn't love it enough. And so I didn't have any emotional attachments to any of the houses that I bought. To me, they were a means to an end. Most importantly, raising 2 boys, being able to provide for them, be able to give them an opportunity to go to college without having any debt.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to give them, something that I don't know. I just basically did it for my kids because as long as I could take care of them, I would figure out that this income, I could take this for my future long-term retirement and use this, as my retirement. And actually I will, that's my plan to do that. So,
mm-hmm.
And this is what, 30-year process. I mean, you still have a lot of debt and you're still paying them off. And that's one thing that we always preach is like, there's a ton of sacrifices that go into buying 1 a year or 2 a year, because, that's probably one less vacation that we took growing up or whatever it would be. That's what I'm so passionate about is like, you did this all while having a full-time job. Mm-hmm. And it took 14 years to get 14, and you're still 10 years, 15 years beyond that, and you're still in the middle of the process.
Right.
We always preach that it's such a long game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, Andrew, is, when Matthew decided to go to Corpus, and I wanted him to live on campus in a dorm, and it was just 1 year, I wanted to get that college experience. But when I realized, he was going to live off campus, I thought, well, I'll go buy a house in Corpus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I'm going to pay rent. You know what I mean? And it was enough where they had several renters in there. So it made sense because they were paying down my mortgage.
Right.
And
yeah.
Matthew was living there for free.
Yeah. So, and there's a huge story to this. Like Robert and I, basically decided, Robert found it, I believe. And he's like, we got to buy this house. And then, I've been very blessed, obviously, to see this stuff and be around it. But back to the sacrifices, like Robert and I both lived there together while, it was trash and we worked on it. And, Robert did 99% of the work. But then we just filled it with roommates. Like we were like, where can we add another room? And we would get another $700. And it was, at one time, I think there were 6 or 7 guys in there all paying $700 a month. It sucked. Like in some ways, living with that many people, like it was a party house for sure. But
I thought there were only 4 roommates.
Yeah, but Robert basically lived there and worked on it for at least 6 months. It seems
6 months.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Robert, were you managing Kim's properties in Round Rock?
Yeah, that's when Matt was still in school. Well, he was a kid when we first started. And
Right. Yeah.
we managed their properties up till Matt, graduated and came back to Round Rock, and they planted their flag and took over. But,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, I know from, working with you for the past, 3.5, 4 years that property management is tough. And so were you a one-man show at that time?
no, it was my wife and I. I mean, we mom and pop. It was small. When we first started with Kim, we probably only managed about 100 doors, but we gradually just let it fall away because it wasn't a business we were interested in staying in forever.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of energy.
For sure. Yeah.
A lot of sacrifices.
Yeah.
Did you have other clients, Robert, that did similar things as far as their goals were buying a couple a year, or?
Yeah, they did, but none that had the success that Kim did because they didn't have the people around them that she did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to say that I was that integral, but they just didn't have the support or the confidence that Kim had in me when I could go. A lot of things you got to remember when these deals pop up on the market. I mean, the vultures are going to pick at it quickly, and the banks are ready to take the first good offer that comes to the door. Well, as some investors, they've got to go have their engineer look at it. They've got to get all these big estimates where you're paying twice as much because you've got to hire a GC to manage the job. Or we could move in, and after spending 10 minutes in a house, I knew if it was a good one or not. And nobody else had that. Nobody else that had the chutzpah to put down that down payment had that available to them. So we were able to get our foot in the door first before anybody else. If that helps.
Was it super competitive? I mean, was it a hot market back then?
No, it was
Not at the beginning.
Not at the beginning. It did get a little tougher as time went on. Here's the thing that wasn't happening back then that's happening now is we didn't have the California money comes in and out of the Austin area in cycles. Whereas right now the California money's here and it's looking. The California money had kind of retreated at that point because the California economy was having its own struggles. So they were the California investors were in defense mode. They weren't playing offense in Central Texas at the time. So that worked out to her benefit as well.
That's awesome. So I guess we've talked a lot, Kim, about your how you built a good team, right? You've built a lot of relationships and surrounded yourself with a lot of good people. And obviously, in I guess your real estate investing career, it came to fruition in the beginning, right? So you were like, oh, well, I got a banker, I got a realtor, I got an insurance agent. But obviously, you didn't plan for years and years that you knew this moment would happen and that you'd have all these people around you. So what about you, or I guess what led you to build those relationships with those people? I guess, was it just that
I think it was the way we were raised. I mean, our whole family is, I think we're outgoing, friendly. We're people, we like to interact with people. That's where we get our energy from, it sparks joy. So there's not probably a shy one in the bunch. And so growing up in a large family, you had to be loud, you had to be heard, so I would say, all of us have really unique qualities, but I think we're pretty outgoing. We're enthusiastic people. We're hardworking. We're driven, and we love people. We've just, that's what we're about, honestly. Yeah.
Where do you fall, I guess, in the your brothers and sisters? Are you oldest, youngest?
I am the ninth.
The ninth.
Bottom.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm near at the bottom, not the baby. They claim that I'm the baby, but I'm the 9th out of 10. So
yeah. So I bet you had to maybe earn your stripes when it came to
exactly.
Yeah.
But
awesome.
And Andrew, another thing too, I was thinking about this is realizing I didn't realize this till later, but my father was heavily invested into real estate, and I found this out many years later. All I ever knew is him working, and he probably did it later on in life. But growing up and raising 10 children and owning an asphalt business, all of his sons worked for him. I mean, they were constantly busy during the summers. Most of the time, in the winter times, they would snowplow. But I think later on, he started getting into real estate and buying commercial properties and just land. So that was really interesting. So I think maybe probably for all of us, we all have regular jobs, but we also invest heavily into real estate. Don't you agree, Matt?
Yeah, I never knew that. Grandpa had a bunch of property. That's crazy.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would say maybe half of them are interested in real estate.
Yeah. So I guess mentioning that your father got into some commercial and some land. I guess is all the property that you own right now? I know you're saying you were adding basically a house a year. Are you still just only invested in residential, or have you ventured out to other areas?
No, just residential right now. Now,
Okay.
I think maybe here in the next few months, and I will talk with people, but thinking about getting into the commercial side of it as well. So that's something I'm kind of interested in. I haven't done it, so it would be a new challenge, but it would be kind of exciting.
Right.
And taking a different direction because it's always been single family dwellings. So, it's just something new and it's interesting and it's exciting. And so I'm thinking in the next year or two, moving in that direction.
That's awesome.
Just to back up a little bit, when you guys were building this, you said it wasn't super hot and then it got hot. And then obviously there was the, 2007, 2008, 9 crash. I'm curious what that was like. And I'm also curious if there was any point that you ran into where you're like, man, what did we do? We're super scared, like nervous, or was it all kind of just, all good, one at a time? How did that look?
Well, Robert, I'll tell you one thing, and you could probably start, but again, we had a very aggressive realtor, and she was amazing. She would go and knock on people's doors that were almost going to be in foreclosure, right, Robert?
That's right.
And
Wow.
so it ended up being a house in the neighborhood. She knocked on the door and he answered, and maybe that was just, I don't know how it happened, but he wanted to meet us. And it's the first time I've actually ever went to go meet a client, and we went over there, we viewed the house. He was going to lose his house, in 2 days?
Yeah, he was within just a matter of hours from having the sheriff at his front door.
Wow.
With his high school daughter that were going to be literally put on the street.
And so we sat down at the kitchen table, and Andrew, he hadn't packed a thing. I looked around, there wasn't a box. There were stacks of lottery tickets. It was a very sad situation. We sat down, we talked to him. He told us what he owed on the house. And we made him an offer of paying off his house and putting a sizable amount of money in his pocket. I don't know what year that was, Robert, but his daughter was able to finish up her last either junior and senior year or senior year in high school. And that pulled at both of our heartstrings. And, every time I thought about that, we come across situations, Robert would say, what would your dad do? Right.
It never failed.
Yeah. So, and, you always, it's great to have real estate, but also if you can help somebody so they don't lose their home because they've come across some, unfortunate situations. And so at that point, we made him an offer, and like I said, we put some money in his pocket and he accepted. And I don't know what year that was. Do you remember? 2000.
I don't recall, but it's been over 10 years ago.
Well, so
he's still there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So so basically you took over, you bought his house, and then he became your tenant. So he started paying rent to you.
Yes.
Were you I mean, obviously that was like an emotional situation, and you were very, extremely generous to help him out. But was there any thought that, like, hey, if he is falling behind on his mortgage, what's the promise that I'm going to get rent from this guy?
There wasn't. I think his reaction, he was, I don't know, Robert, he was just very extremely emotional, and I felt like he wouldn't do that.
Actually, at the time, Andrew, we had every expectation that it would not work out. And I want to back up to how she ended up getting this deal. Now, this particular deal, it was on the Roddy Report, which is the list of foreclosures that goes out. And that's where our bird dog realtor, Ivy, found out about him and just cold called on him. He'd already had several investors in his living room, but Kim offered a nugget that none of the rest of them would. He only owed $80,000 on the house. So what Kim did is said, look, without going into how much the house is worth now, let's just say it was a very good deal. She offered to pay off the mortgage and put $20,000 into his pocket to let him get caught up on personal expenses, let his life get out of chaos, and turn around and let him lease the house back at a fair price. So his daughter, at the time, we didn't want to help him let his daughter stay there until she could graduate Round Rock High School. Mm-hmm. And here it is, over 10 years later, he pays every month, and he's still paying down. It's just but that's the thing. She came with something nobody else was willing to offer, mm-hmm. which is very generous.
That's amazing.
And she saved his life that day. I have no doubt he would probably not be alive today if it wasn't.
Wow.
Who came up with that offer and that idea?
That was Ivy. Ivy kind of bounced it out there, and then Kim was receptive. And this is one of the rare times Kim didn't try to lowball, because she was so pissed at him. Why you drag me in here? You know I'm gonna make me cry.
That's awesome.
It was tough. But, then, Andrew, we had a second one. Same thing, a house in Florence, and the lady was probably in her 80s, and she was taking care of her mother that was probably early hundreds. Mm-hmm. And it really wasn't a good deal. But they were going to lose their home. So we decided we were going to do it, and we asked them certain things, if they had other liens. She said no. Then we find out she has liens, and that was just another thing. I thought, Robert, what are we doing? Yeah, I was so scared. And again, he, it said, what would your dad do? And I was like, okay, it's really not a good deal, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to trust you and hope that, at least these people aren't going to be thrown out. They were elderly. And unfortunately, I went and did it, and I'm glad I did. But at the end of the day of closing, or after we closed on the house, Ivy went out there to have them sign a rental agreement, and they refused to. So unfortunately, we had to. It was foreclosed, right? Or
they reneged on the whole deal that we'd worked out for them to continue to stay there and lease the place. So that's where our company stepped in as a management company, and we started the eviction process. This was probably the hardest part that Kim's ever faced on one of these deals, because I had to just push her away and just say, "Don't, just stay out of it." Mm-hmm. You don't want to see the ugly side that's about to happen.
Mm-hmm. That was tough.
She tried to separate herself from it, but I could sense for a long time, that really hurt her. So, that's the problem with Kim. She's got such strong emotions in both directions. Mm-hmm. And that's the hard part for some investors, is they can't separate themselves from the people inside the houses they own.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's why you have a property management company.
Exactly.
I couldn't have done it without having Robert with the property management and now Matt and Lexi, because you have to have that separation and that distance. And, you don't want to get to know their stories. And especially for me, you don't, you know what I mean? Because I would cave or say, okay, just let them have this. Or, if you want to run it, you got to get a property management company.
Hey, funny. Sam, my younger brother, for the listeners, and your son, is calling Lexi, talking property management, asking her questions. And he literally told her like 2 days ago, I now understand why I should hire a property manager.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
There's just something about it where people realize it's a business, mm-hmm. and they don't try to take advantage of it. Where with an individual like my brother, he's trying to work with them and try and be nice or whatever, and then they realize, oh, there's negotiations here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's way different whenever it's humans talking instead of a business. It's you got to create that separation. I've used a property manager ever since I started investing in real estate, and so I just bought a duplex a few months ago, and my renters on the other side, I'm living on one side, the renters on the other side wanted to move out early, and they're a young couple, and they were about to get married, and they said they bought a house and they wanted to end their lease early, and that was like pulling on my heartstrings because they're newlyweds, they're my same age. I felt like how they felt whenever I was trying to buy my first house. I was like, yeah, sure, go ahead, move out early, it's fine. And now that side's been vacant for like 3 or 4 months, and I'm struggling to find renters. And so I'm like, man, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just said, talk to the property manager.
Exactly.
But lessons learned.
How early was it that you let them out?
I let them out 3 months early.
Oh.
But I was like, my thought process was obviously, the whole emotional side. And then I was like, I could get more in rent. And then freaking coronavirus ruined everything.
That's what I was going to say. Like, typically that's like not that big a deal, but you ran into freaking COVID. And
right. Yeah.
When did your property go up for lease again? Was it
my property? It went up for lease in February.
Oh,
and
you got March, April. I mean, come on.
I know. But lessons learned. I guess Kim, kind of going back to you. So, like, speaking of that time of that house in Florence, and then kind of referring to how I learned that lesson, with using a property manager. Every investor that I've talked to has said that they've either had one loss, like there's got to be one, or there's a lesson learned. Like, I guess there's that quote that you don't know what you're made of until you get punched in the mouth.
right.
Was there ever a time that you had a loss, or there was a scare within your real estate investing career thus far?
Wow.
If not, then luck, good on you.
Well, does it include the house in Corpus that burnt down?
Oh, wow.
Now, and that to me, it actually, that was the house that Matt lived in. And then the biggest thing is to find out that it caught on fire, and when we knew people were living there. So the fear of thinking that somebody had gotten hurt. I mean, that was, and nobody did. It burnt down, not all the way down, but nobody got hurt. So I would say something like that happens to a house that you own, that you're renting out. I mean, that was kind of scary for me, but no, all in all, at the end of the day, I think, and I was telling somebody earlier, getting into real estate was the best mistake that I ever made. Honestly, it just happened, and I am fortunate that it did happen, because it's provided a means to an end for the boys, and now that they're adults and stuff like that. So, I got in at a great time, and we're going through this COVID now, and it's a little nerve-wracking, because then again, you guys, we go through here and we have people that aren't able to pay rent.
Mm-hmm.
So
but one thing I like to point out, Mom, is like, you've got, I don't know, 16 properties or so, but you still work every day. And that's what I don't think people realize is they hear, oh, someone has 16 houses. Why aren't they living on the beach doing nothing? But that's the whole point that I always try to preach, is it's like consistent sacrifice over a very long period of time.
absolutely.
Like you have a lot of houses, but you don't work because you want to. You have to work, right? I mean, for a little bit longer.
Right.
And you've made a ton of sacrifices to do that. And having 16 houses sounds cool, and it is cool, but it's not just like you're just collecting rent every single month. You got mortgages to pay, taxes, insurance, expenses,
renovations.
One day it will get there, right? But that's going to be 30 years after you started in some ways.
Right. Well, and another thing too is that, Andrew, and the reason why, part of it too, is with me working, I only have 3 houses left, and everything's paid off.
Wow, that's amazing.
Oh, you just did a huge refinance.
Right. So I paid off 7. We're going to pay off another one, and then so I'll have 3 houses left.
Man,
so,
that's amazing.
That was the biggest thing, is try and pay them off as soon as I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And are you still, is that the current goal, is to pay those off, or are you still looking for more to add to the portfolio?
That is the current goal. But
Okay.
if I come across a really good deal, I absolutely would jump on it for sure.
That's
Robert,
awesome.
Robert, I think you had a couple things to say earlier, and then again.
I want to brag on Kim. She was brilliant without knowing it because of her strategy from day one. She never wanted to be super aggressive from the rents because nothing made her more nervous than a vacancy. She
Right.
could literally lay in bed at night and just hear the money getting sucked out of her bank account. So our marching orders were make the rent reasonable, and part of our plan always was buy moderate income homes.
Mm-hmm.
You can really get in trouble if you go out and buy the $500,000 homes that have really high rent. But if your house is in that $900 to $1,500 a month range, you're always going to have
Right.
a target audience. And so once we got them renovated, we never had any trouble getting them occupied at a fair price. And another thing that Kim was brilliant without knowing it, she trusted me to make the best decisions on maintenance. If the people need a new stove, they need a new hot, we always took care of her residents. And if we could go back and look at the average length of the residents in each of her homes, I would stack that up and put my yearly paycheck against any other property owner. Just because she let them feel like it was their home, she kept it maintained, she kept it safe. In return, she wanted the yard mowed. But other than that, she wasn't invasive. She wasn't like, some of these owners that want to go charging in and looking at things every month. For better or worse, they feel comfortable living in her house.
And they made it their homes, and there wasn't a turnover rate. I mean, a lot of people have lived there at least 10 years. There's a few that's even more than that. So that's kind of nice. And you sit there and think that becomes their home. You know what I mean? They've lived there for so long. It wasn't the same home, and it was much better than when I bought it. So gardens and flowers and planting trees. And if you take care of your renters and and take care of the house, and I think are real attentive to their needs and things that they want, and when things need to get fixed, to do it in a timely fashion, they're not going to leave. So, which is amazing, especially these people have families,
Right.
So,
yeah. That's awesome. That's great. Well, so we're getting around, I guess, to our time limit, but I don't want to skip over the fact that we've talked about how you still work full time, then you do your investing on top of it. So do you want to tell us what you do currently and who you work for?
Currently, I'm with RDC Paving. We are an asphalt paving maintenance seal coat striping company, and we're located in Hutto, Texas. And so
and you operate all over the, I guess, Central Texas, Austin area.
All over, even outside Georgia, we will travel.
Wow.
We have about 20 people, so I'm really excited about it.
That's awesome. What does RDC stand for?
Honestly, I'm not really quite sure. Retention, Development Corporation or something like that.
Nice. That's a good, yeah.
Something
that sounds
like that.
That sounds
Absolutely.
right.
So
that's awesome.
The guy that I work for, his name is Ryan Rowland. He's 28 years old, and he has the same drive and passion, and treats his employees well and his customers. And here's another thing: in going into business with Ryan, our next step is to find some land instead of renting our property in Hutto, Texas.
Right.
Buying some property, building a shop and an office on it with other existing structures to offset the rent.
All right.
And the mortgage. For our mortgage. So that will lower that. So that's kind of where I was leaning into, going on the
commercial
side of it, doing something ourselves, and even renting out parcels of land. And so right now, but that's between a 1 to 2 year plan. That's what we're hoping to do.
That's awesome.
That's actually looking for some property for us as we speak.
All right.
So, yeah.
Well, you got the right guy.
I know it.
Well, so we like to end our podcast asking you, what is one piece of advice or the most important thing that you would tell a young entrepreneur, or in this case, a young real estate investor?
Wow. Real estate, probably biggest advice is surround yourself with a good network of people. whether it's a cash offer, have a relationship with a banker, real estate, property management, those are the things. Surround yourself with people that have your back and they're in your corner and think like you do. I think that's because it's so hard to do it all by yourself. And you got to have a lot of people out there, taking your interest and wanting to do what's best for you. So I'd say definitely surround yourself with really good people to help you, again, the financing, the property management side of it, the real estate side of it, the banking side of it.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Absolutely.
Well, Matt, do you have any more questions before we close out?
I would ask the same question to Robert before we leave.
Yeah.
Part of this thing is that we like to give the advice to our listeners, but it also comes to us. That's one of the cool things about this podcast. So every time we ask the question, we get some advice. Every time we have a new podcast, we get to meet somebody new. In this case, not so much, but we've been trying to do a lot of what you're saying along the way. Build every podcast is a new relationship. But Robert, same thing. Like part of why we're doing this is to help young people that might have never thought about real estate or heard about it. I feel blessed to have heard about it at a young age and seen the benefits. If there's 20 years old, 25, like advice to someone just starting their career as an entrepreneur or interested in real estate.
I don't think I could say it much better than Kim did, honestly. Look at somebody that has succeeded in whatever you're trying to do, and try to follow that pattern. And, just like she said, so get people that you really trust, because Kim knew that I knew that if I let her down, that she was going to have body parts removed from me. And I went to bed every night knowing that, and every person she has a relationship with know that. So I guess my advice would be just what Kim said: just realize you don't know everything, and somebody somewhere always knows more than you do.
Right.
Just be willing to admit that. I see investors get in a lot of jams when they just think, "Oh, I got this. This."
I agree.
And you don't got this. You didn't look at it close enough.
I've heard if you're the smartest guy or woman in the room, there's a problem there.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that too. So I agree. And the thing too, and Andrew, is going on the other side. I look back on it and, I was young. I thought that was a lot of money back then. I wish I would have done 6 in 1 year instead of, 1 every 6 years. But I don't have any regrets. I did make a lot of sacrifices, and, I have reaped the benefits, and I will continue to reap the benefits long term. But if you're willing to make the sacrifices, maybe not going out to dinner all the time or going on vacations or whatever, do it while you're young. I mean, you can do it anytime, but if you're younger, it's even better. You probably don't have to work as long, but absolutely, it's worth all the sacrifices as well as right? You made the sacrifices. You now have, several, and it all pays off at the end, if you're willing to make that sacrifice. For sure.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great advice. Well, Robert and Kim, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I love both you guys a whole lot. Y'all are awesome people, and I'm so glad that y'all are in our lives. Matt, any closing comments?
Oh, that was a great one. Appreciate everyone doing that and had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Hey, thanks, Andrew and Matthew and Robert.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. To our listeners, we are signing off.